Most global merger control regimes are suspensory, meaning that transactions cannot be implemented before the respective merger control approvals have been achieved.
There is this requirement to notify and then wait for the approval before closing the transaction. That is known frequently as a gap period, and companies need to be extraordinarily vigilant during this period not to be exercising control, because over the last year or so, regulatory authorities are waking up to conduct which occurs during this gap period, and they're beginning to impose fines for breaches. And the fines have been quite significant. I think certainly over the last 12 months, we have been even more vigilant to ensure that during that gap period, that there is no jumping of the gun.
There are two different kinds of gun jumping. There's the procedural gun jumping where the parties haven't notified a transaction at all. And then there's the substantive gun jumping where the parties have notified, but prior to obtaining clearance, they engage in inappropriate conduct. And by inappropriate, we mean situations where the acquirer starts controlling the target prior to receiving the authority's clearance decision, be it by imposing certain conduct, by jointly implementing certain new commercial strategies, by presenting themselves as one entity to the outside world. There are certainly a few things to keep in mind when entering into a new transaction these days. The parties need to be very careful about the conduct prior to obtaining clearance. The acquirer should not in any way exercise control over the target business prior to obtaining competition authorities' approval. For instance, in the context of the share purchase agreement, there will always be the so-called gap provisions, which are in place to ensure that the acquirer can protect the value of the target business. We can definitely expect increased scrutiny from competition authorities in this context. What's interesting is that the European Court of Justice recently issued a judgment which provides guidance on the concept of gun jumping. And this will be interesting in particular as some parties to recent gun jumping cases have challenged their fine and the gun jumping decision before the European Court of Justice. So it'll be interesting to see what this leads to in practice, how the European Commission and national authorities will continue to apply the concept of gun jumping, and how the court will look at these gun jumping decisions.